podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show, please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
So today I wanted to add on with you about a couple things, and to frame it, a couple earlier in the year, and I think we might have mentioned it, but I don't know if we did, at the Davos World Economic Forum, or the World Economic Forum in Davos, whichever way you're supposed to say it. The Prime Minister of Canada gave a very interesting address, and specifically the content of that being about the rupture of the world, of the rules-based global order, right? And I'll give my understanding of that, and not necessarily the scholarly grounded version, but at least my basic understanding. Like, the rules-based order has been this idea that there are, like, that since World War II, the multilateral organizations, typified by the UN, would create a space where different nations, regardless of their, social or, economic, military power, that we all are supposed to be playing by a certain set of rules or guidelines as a planet, right? That was also for a long time in the context of the Cold War, which, for you younger folks that wasn't there, you should go study the whole science of the Cold War, but also becomes the backdrop of the end of the sort of the age of colonialism as it pertained to, at that time, sort of like the basically, as Martin Luther King in his Beyond Vietnam speech says, articulates that there's a world revolution happening, and somehow U.S. might be on the wrong side of it. But all over the planet, sort of nation states that either formed as a result of, the colonial experience, especially in Africa, in South America, South Pacific, Southeast Asia, some, major conflicts, and over the last, since World War II, at different times, different conflicts, all rooted in, removing foreign powers and have a sense of self-identity or self-sovereignty, but also then the competing interests of, sort of a global hegemony of either of what was considered the West, right? Yeah. Like, so United States, Western Europe, and the Cold War, I wouldn't really say the East, but not the West, in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union.
Right.
And then later, when the Soviet Union collapses, you have really a situation where there's one, especially from a military perspective, superpower, which is the U.S., but still the remnants of, the structural influence that what is the current Russian state, the rise of China into manufacturing, and now sort of its own global, trade and development, entity and powerhouse. So, but the idea of the rules-based order is that through the UN and other instruments, you could try to have some sort of fairness between nations, so to speak, at least in theory, that sovereignty, we respect these other things.
In theory.
In light of the last year, and particularly our federal government behavior, basically that age is over. And I thought it was important. I mean, the speech, I think people should listen to it. And the details, I don't want to sway too deep in that, but I wanted to talk about that and something that we've mentioned, the concept of global citizenship. We've mentioned the concept of liberated spaces. We've talked about, and we regularly speak about, our own motivations for like service and engagement and connectivity and building the world and doing things in governance and why these things are important in terms of the well-being of Black people and Black communities and the communities globally. And that a part of that for me is also the discussion of what is the rules-based order, so to speak, that we abide by, right? What is the world that we are pushing or working to create? And I wanted to kind of have this be maybe the first of a couple times over the course of the, however long we add on about it, to bring some definition to this idea of global citizenship, of shared experience. I think in that we're all, what are we working towards? What are we pushing ideas about? What are we trying to create? What are we trying to be a part of? So, yeah, I wanted to, I guess, get us jumped off on that. And then with that, I will, open the door, hear what you think. Let's get started.
Yeah, no, God, peace. So there's a lot there, right? But there's a lot we need to be contending with, and like sometimes I fear that we're not contending with nearly enough. As global citizens, as Black folks in America, who frankly for the last 100 years, up until relatively recently, had occupied a very unique space in the African diaspora, the Black diaspora, and frankly the global diaspora of many people rightly or wrongly perceiving us as the moral center and the moral conscience of what goes on in this place, right? And being seen as that, and leaders, global leaders who were seen as such. We talked about Jesse Jackson. It's important to think about it. At one point, Jesse Jackson was probably the most powerful or noted Black man from America in the world.
Yeah.
And depending on, other than you talking about like, Nelson Mandela, probably was one of the most noted Black men of any kind of space in the world at that time. And so I think, and the role of how Black folks have seen ourselves as global citizens, given our unique sojourn in this country, I think for a lot of reasons, and some good and some I think are some more insidious, frankly, we've receded from that positioning of leadership. Right. And I think as we've receded from the position of leadership, not because of the same reason, I think America has receded from a certain degree of leadership. And I think you get what you get now. Right? Like you get we get a space where you get an American government that is pulling back from the rules-based order that within reason most people abided by. Obviously, you have players who didn't abide by things, including America, and did not suit them. But for the most part, everyone pays their dues to the UN except us. People would give to the stuff they were supposed to give to. Right? Like you have this order. The fortunate thing that I had to be able to go to the UN in Geneva, and that kind of experience, again, being a Black person from America and being like, okay, this is supposed to be the hall. And at that point, it was still kind of respected as that, where like these more global conversations about how humans are going to interact are going to take place. And America is going to be a part of it. Now, we know when America pulls itself out of stuff when it doesn't interest us, but I'm saying generally we were a part of it. Versus now, we have pulled ourselves and extracted back and led Canada, of all groups, of all people. Shout out to all my brothers and sisters in CLO now and in Canada. But like, it took Canada to be like, hold on, man, my man's tripping. So we can't really depend on them anymore. And what does that look like, and what does that mean in a rapidly changing world, which I don't think a lot of us are talking enough about. I think to some degree because we've been talking about some very specific things happening in America. But I think we've said that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And it's a space that Black folks, at least again for the last 100 and some odd years, have been walking and chewing gum. Frederick Douglass was going all over the world, right? On boats and shit. So it wasn't like you wasn't even a plane.
Right.
Like where you got to be on a boat for a week and a half.
Right.
And they can't nobody call you. Right?
They had
like,
to send a letter that when you get that they might put a letter in the mail so that when you get where you going, the letter might catch up with you. Like by the time you read this message, it'll have been 2 weeks past the third moon or something.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like send a letter on the boat. They gotta send the boat back over the other way. Who knows when they're gonna get that? But my point is we've been engaging that and interacting in that. And so I think your point around citizenry, as we have retreated, I think this is also where you get conversations around what it means to be Black in America right now, which is this broader dialogue to me of the diaspora wars. It is also an extension of some of Black and Latino folks and Asian folks' perspective on immigration. So it's kind of cool when you're debating Jollof rice, right? And who started Afro beats. But then it gets insidious when it's like, y'all shouldn't be here. Right. And again, it ain't just Black folks saying brown folks shouldn't be here. It's brown folks saying brown folks shouldn't be here. It's Asian folks saying Asian folks shouldn't be here. It breaks across, right? It's not just as simple as we all think it is. So recentering and having maybe a new perspective, even though the idea of how we interact globally is noted for over a century, the recentering is an important thing.
And it came to me like drawing it up, and I appreciated one of the things in the speech. You know, he speaks to like even the framing. He starts off with like, even while we were participating in the rules-based order, as like, you know, sort of like, you know, at least the current especially thing, if you know the African American side eye to all various things that I can't believe this is happening, and we over there like, word, can't believe it's happening. Get out of here. Must be interesting, right? That the wink and the nod that, yeah, y'all, I know that actually, you know, we even benefited from a not totally fair rules-based order and a structure that, you know, structurally disadvantaged, you know, didn't really respect the sovereignty of, you know, I mean, we could do like the global South, right? They didn't respect the sovereignty of global South nations, meaning if we would allow, if not by military force, right, because that had largely become unvogue, although our current, you know, president and Secretary of Defense, and I'm gonna call it Secretary of Defense because they ain't actually passed no actual legislation to change the name, so they can kiss my ass. They want to call it that other stuff.
Well, they just got a DBA.
Yeah, they got a DBA.
You clearly look at it. They
got a doing government ass. Doing the government, the DGA, the doing government ass, right? That
doing government.
You have a structure where, you know, folks know it's like, yeah, you don't want to buy American potatoes, but America is making it really hard for you to say no to buying these potatoes from them instead of growing your own potatoes, you know, or whatever. But you know, the destruction of like the Arkansas rice farmers in the 90s, you know what I'm saying? And the Haitian rice farmers, you know what I'm saying, also in the same time frame, in the name of, again, you know, large multinational profits backed up by the U.S. government and other large governments, right? These sort of, that gets to this place where you go, that like the why something isn't happening in many different nations around the world becomes this like, oh, well, it must just be y'all. Very similar to, so I've been also, so I'm thinking about this. I've been finished reading Michael Harriot's History, Black AF, Black History. How is it? I'm saying it wrong, but I enjoy Michael Harriot. He's brilliant and hilarious. But basically, there's one of the closing chapters. It gets into just the idea that, like, especially most of our lives, from the early civil rights movement to like Barack Obama presidency, the general conceit was like white folks, like, oh man, it's nothing wrong with the system. It's just, it's the black folks. They just need some help, but they need to get it together. And it's like, like the idea that you wanted to like be able to like go where you want and have free motion was something to do with like it was a malfunction of something that was happening with you. Why you don't have maybe the community safety that you should have or access to reasonable services despite existing with Jim Crow laws in the South and what they call it in the North, John Crow or something else. Crow. There was a crow. There was a name for it that gets said all the time. I can't remember it off the top of my head. And then by the time we get to Barack Obama's presidency, it's just like, nah, it's not us, y'all. Like we have proven multiple times, like we're not tripping in the stuff we experience here. Even if we keep going back to these things, there is a continued willful investment in one group of people or our group of people being, at the end of the negative end of the power leverage. And every time we do anything we do to to move out of that, even now, we're even fighting it down where there's people, you can throw a stone on the internet and it'd be like, black folks got to take it. It'll be someone black saying to black folks got to take accountability for what's going on in the neighborhood. And blue, 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 blue. And what I'm relating that to is the things that are unseen. If you read like, Diary of Economic Hitman, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, like all these different words about like countries in effort to try to have their own self-determination, then be like, well, you can build a water system, but you really need to let this French company own your water. And if you do that, we'll give you this much better loan, right? So because you need the capital up front so you can get the hard infrastructure to build the system, or you name it, different things that happens. And we don't always see it as African Americans if you're not studying it. But our own formation to that sometimes can show up in, don't incorporate that your municipality, so that way you keep your taxes down, but then you don't have no services, no infrastructure, no roads, none of the things that allow you to have like a robust sense of what you want your community to look like, or if you are in a place that is maybe less developed, then the other side of that is, there's all this physical plant that has not been maintained for 30 years. We're going to give it to you now. And the bill to fix it and say, you, mayor of Baltimore, fix 40 years of non-investment on your own. You guys got it. Y'all got plenty of money. You get your own taxes. Philadelphia, you name it, major American city. And these things are parallel in the relationship in terms of the structural things that actually end up where the rubber meets the road when people want to change something or make something improve, and that we have a place in it. It's
just to add on, I think your point now, it makes me think about how switches the other way. I talked about our global citizenry and how we have stood up for that. The other part of our global citizenry is, as the systems become more complex, what is your role in that complexity? Right? Because even though you're like, I'm not doing this, but guess what? To other people, you're doing it. It's like a story I told you before. I was in London relatively recently and went to a coffee shop, and the British are really good at this. They can turn a robbery into a homicide really fast when it comes to debate. Like it escalates really quickly. So I'm in there getting the coffee, and she knows from the States. So she's like, hey, how you doing? How's your time in London? Are you enjoying East London? Have you been to Brixton? So, it started there. And, I had been to these places and started to talk about how, frankly, Europe had kind of figured out how to move black folks to the suburbs before America did. And not in a good way, in the other way, right? Hackney had figured it out in the 90s. And so we're talking, and it just kept elevating. So what's your take on how America is representing this? Well, here's my perspective. And she's like, yeah. So, you being an American citizen and all, do you feel any culpability? And it just kept going. It just kept, and it was ill because it makes you, because in America, as black folks, we pull out of what we say is happening because it's
we totally disassociate. We be like, yo, they tripping. Look at them.
Which is wrong. Look at them tripping, but the rest of the world don't say they tripping because you lit it. You pay taxes there. And unless we understand that y'all have some sort of broader global push against it, we assume you're okay with it.
Right. Right.
And we got to ask the question. And here's my challenge to all of us. When we didn't like what was going on in revolutionary movements in Africa, we told people.
Yeah.
We said, we ain't going to play Sun City. I couldn't wear Reeboks until damn 1991. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody getting Reebok freestyles. Everybody killing them. I can't get them on Easter. I'm getting Lecoq Sportif. I'm doing all kind of shit. I can't because I can't wear Reeboks. You buying Cherry Coke? I can't buy Cherry Coke. Why? Because they invested in South Africa. Right? So there was a time not so long ago when we made our vantage point clear about how we saw the world and what was happening in Africa. So I had to step back a bit because it could be easy for us, again, as we start to dig and so into stuff here, we're like, oh, well, we're just handling stuff here. But then that begs the question, well, were we not handling stuff here in 84?
Right.
Were we not handling stuff here in 88? We've always had to handle stuff here, but that didn't necessarily mean that you took your eye off the global ball. It also goes back to the point I always will share about these damn grapes, right? And here's what I mean about grapes. I like grapes, and however you break them down. I like grapes if you eat them. I like grapes if you drink them. I like grapes, right? But here's the thing. If you say, okay, I want a seedless grape, and I'm going to get it from Chile. If you think about the cost, like the global cost of you wanting a grape from Chile or wanting a piece of beef, not my own stuff notwithstanding, a piece of beef from like Venezuela,
right.
not
the
Venezuela,
highlands
but like,
of,
like Chile
of Argentina
or Argentina.
Yeah.
Or the Pampas, yeah.
The Pampas, like, yeah.
Yo, you are stressing the global environment. Dog, for them grapes, let it happen and you can get some grapes from Pennsylvania.
Right.
You get some grapes from California like everybody else, man. Like, but again, this is a part of the system where you're participating in it because you're like, well, it's an invisible cost to you, but it's not an invisible cost to the rules-based order. And that was it in its best sense. Now we've entered a mercantilist sense of the rules-based order, right? Like we talked about before, this is when a New York real estate person becomes the most powerful person in the world.
Right.
So the rules and inclinations of a New York real estate person becomes the means by which the rest of the world has to
function. Right. The rest of the world has to negotiate the relationship with the
has to at least not function. He has to at least start to negotiate. When someone will negotiate and literally sue people until they can't sue them no more to put them out of business. And this is who you're contending with. So from a rules-based order, you have to start asking yourself, what is our individual grounding and what is our community's grounding? And we got to stop, I'm not saying, obviously present company excluded, you're not doing this, and we the people we know are not doing this, but we got to start telling our kids that what's going on over there don't matter. It ain't our problem.
It ain't got nothing to do with us. Like, whatever.
We got to stop. Right. We got to stop telling ourselves that. One more piece I wanted to bring up, Just, and this will be quick. But when you said rules-based order, it made me think about the other rules-based order that Black folks have always assumed. And what that rules-based order to me is the rules of the street. Right? And traditionally, we had these rules, meaning people was going to sell drugs, people were going to engage in nefarious activities of the night. And there was an implicit and explicit thing was the things of the night were not going to see the day, right? We were going to keep women and children out of the worlds that they, quote unquote, weren't a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a rules-based order that was accepted for many years. maybe not as much as we think it is. Some of it, I think, is, the nostalgia, the crippling nostalgia of times past, but at least to some degree. I mean, Rich Porter's little brother was kidnapped in 88, 89. So clearly we weren't playing this game forever. But suffice to say, and then we got to a place where over time, people's respect for the rules-based order changed. And we've all become, in a sense, held hostage by the lack of interest in successive generations going by the rules-based order. And I think about that in context of us globally. And people now that are old like us start talking about how it was back in the day. Right? I argue even our back in the day, it was guys that shot up corners.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like this was the beginning of the Uzi, right? Not as well tuned as the Switch per se, technology being what it is, but it was the Switch of our day, and you had to be careful where you were. This is going to sound crazy, but it's true. Anytime you went to a Jamaican store during the time between the JBM and Shower Posse, it was like, yo, get in, get your chicken patty, and get out of the store.
Right.
Because you don't know at any time what this war could look like. Right. So, and again, this is the 80s. Right. So this is not some far off time. Right. But my point is about this rules-based order and about disruptors. And sometimes we have to question who benefits from the disruption. And what is our positioning, going back even to community work that both you and I have done? What is our positioning on how we deal with the disruptors? And what is the alternative order for when the rules-based order, whether it's the global rules-based order, which has had its own challenges, because like you said, even when we all liked it, it was still a French company that had to back it. I was reading The Second Emancipation by Howard French about Kwame Nkrumah and, the freedom of Ghana and like needing to build a dam and like having to build a dam, and then the Kaiser family coming in out of America to help them build a dam. And eventually the cost of the dam, and many of his people in the economists from the global South were like, don't let them build the dam.
All right.
They're going to cost you too much. But you couldn't build a dam with the support of the American government without the Kaiser family. And they built the dam and it went under quickly. So even that rules-based order still had a lot of pain. But this new one, we have to start saying, what is the continued negative externalities of this activity?
And I come to this from the wanting us to again, in this moment, what are some of the guidelines that we're going to put for ourselves as we're trying to, especially where I'm at in life now, what we're trying to move towards, when we start to really contemplate especially but my kids both getting old enough that, a couple years, they be, free range children, the young adults. I don't really need to be around if I want to go live in Kigali for 6 months. One, do I have a professional existence that will allow me to do that? And then two, what is the positive or negative impact of me as an African American deciding to go stay there for 6 months? You know what I'm saying? And build the means for me to do that, from either how I'm, what I'm paying, who I'm paying, if the tension that has been coming up, with particularly Ghana seems to lead the highlights just because of the year return stuff and at least the more publicized story that things are being built for foreign investment at the expense of not building for the local folks, right? Not building the infrastructure for the people who are there, are not going anywhere else, or not going to be a part of the international movement class, right? And the idea of us maybe coming and finding peace, if you were able to do so in terms of economic success, but maybe not having the most positive impact on the local reality, right? Like internet from an international global gentrification perspective, and and Ghana not being the only place. But there's a deeper question of, there is a structural imbalance that will create this sort of like if you are, some, you don't even have to be by our terms what we would call like super wealthy. But if you had a home or some assets, retirement assets that would allow you, there's a whole like Cape Verde, there's a couple other island, like the Canaries are another one that have like these whole where they're like, yo, you can come and bring your retirement and live here, and it's like certain rules, you can't do certain stuff, but if you bring your bread, we got a spot for you, and you can be here and you can enjoy this warm breezes and eat nice. Don't try to work. Don't work. You can't get a job. Right? Is that sort of like in terms of the vision? We're saying like, oh, I want to be able to move around the world and see different things, and just as a footnote for in case somebody silly is listening, our discussion of global citizenship is not centered around some idea of like creating some sort of conspiracy theory, world government, or some other foolishness. Just in case one of you big dummies is out there or somebody does a clip, I just, it'll be in the tape. Like that's not, we understand nation states. Like I'm still trying to vote, what I'm saying, in the United States. But if professionally I could be somewhere else in spirit, some other part of the world, and again, thinking about if we are concerned with the well-being of other people in the world and the residual effects of our government's decisions or trade decisions or other things, I'm primarily concerned with the well-being of, I am actually into, I like humans. I like hanging out with them. I like hanging out with other people, getting to know them, sharing and developing authentic connections. And if we're going to create a alternate like structure to that is more protective of us here and more fair generally, we do have to have something. Like it can't just be like, well, we're gonna, it's like the idiot in the comments. Yeah, we gotta have a revolution. Like revolution of what to where, to whom to what are the terms? Like we gonna, you think you're gonna disrupt this unfair thing, and then one day we just gonna make all kinds of decisions by mental osmosis. We're not gonna have convening bodies or deliberative spaces or scholarly groups that contemplate the best way to make a decision. Like, no, there's going to be a thing and we're going to participate in it, like whatever it is. And right. So we have to start thinking about it. That's why it was present in the end of the Black Panther Party from the beginning, in the different cultural nationalism, why we were fully invested in anti-apartheid in our youth. And it wasn't like, oh no, the civil rights movement's over, so let's all go get jobs at Fortune 500 companies. Like, yeah, some people did go get jobs at Fortune 500 companies, but it was also like, nah, the world is not fair yet. There's still stuff to be done, right? And so within our ethos is like thinking about, yeah, man, like I want to go, if you're a lawyer and you're like, man, if I did some sort of law, can I do law from anywhere else in the world? And is it the right thing? If there's an expat community in places like Portugal or Mexico City or other parts of the world where, there can be a negative externality. And
that was the one I was going to say.
Just give it a moment. Yeah. Hey, you know what I'm saying? Internet trying to break a brother down. You know what I'm saying? Won't let him put the black guy in the game.
Trying to put a black guy in the game. You know what I'm saying?
Internet can't stop us at all, right? Like, but that when as we're conceiving these ideas and we're fighting against, a repositioning of sort of fascism in this moment, and a replaying of as I think something that more centers it is a new attempt to remove agency and reorder power here around a certain set of values, like we still have, I think, to adequately defend ourselves and our communities, we also have to have the impact of our decisions is bigger than what's going to happen, between here and the river. It is also going to be, hey, yeah, let's talk about them farm subsidies. Let's talk about our, those trade agreements, not just from oh man, my gas is too expensive, but also from a man, is what's happening with the chocolate farmers, where the chocolate farmers is like, look, you gonna pay us right. We ain't doing this no more. And Reese's had to come out and be like you.
And sometimes that disrupts your happiness. Sometimes that means the coffee you thought. See, I think about it like this, because I like quality coffee. And if you like quality coffee, people will tell you, oh, you want to pay $4 for coffee. And what you're really telling me is you actually don't know the cost of coffee itself. What you're paying is a depressed price because of subsidies. You're never paying the actual price of the coffee where it came from, and it's usually from a country that has some shit going on that ain't really okay. So that's why you're paying $1 for the cup of coffee. To say nothing if it got sprayed and laid as far as pesticides, right? Like, you're not paying the cost of doing business, boss. And that's the thing about what can happen. So again, rerouting ourselves does take to say, who are we subsidizing? Acknowledging that has positives and negatives on people we care about. And what does it look like? And, again, not to go back, I study history, but I don't have a PhD in nostalgia. But a black elected officials and brown elected, Latino elected officials was relevant, cared about global stuff. Ron Dellums cared about the defense budget. Mickey Dellums from Texas, Mickey Leland, pardon me, cared about farms. So you had elected officials who had as much interest in the global context of this experiment as we do the local context of the experiment. Also, I wanted to say, as part as you was talking about the expat community and everything, through my last travel, which I'm still kind of fully processing, you start to be aware, sometimes at small cultural things, sometimes at larger things, of what it means to be somewhere where people are like, hey, you want breakfast? And you're like, yeah, I have breakfast. And then in your mind, either you're making something quick at home or somebody's putting something in some sort of convection oven that they prepared somewhere else, and they're making it for you real fast for you to walk and eat. Then you go somewhere and you're like, no, they're going to make you wait until this food is fully ready. And it feels frustrating because you're like, wait, man, it's time to go. I got to go, man. I can't be sitting here would you want to pour my tea and put bro high and shit? Do it. Come on, man. So it made me realize, yo, you don't have any patience. You don't have any patience for process. And then how much does that spill over into the rest of your life where you have no patience for process? To you, but you were talking about the liver of bodies. What happens when we don't matter. Let's just get to the answer. Well, you're not going to be engaged in governance. If you can't have the patience to wait for breakfast, how are you going to have the patience to debate with people on really, 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 really big ideas?
How are you going to get to a durable agreement about something important if you can't even take the time to get through the opening introductions?
Right. And knowing different people have different ways that they get to agreements. So your way of getting to the agreement is not the only way of getting to the agreement. Again, countries where if you eat walking, they shame you. Sit down and eat. We don't have that, we whether you call it being efficient with time or whatever. So it does remind me of what you're saying and what is going to pull out of us that we have not pulled out of ourselves recently. It kind of goes to I think about it, whether in athletics or something. What happens when you have to do something that is currently beyond your reach, and then you have to utilize new tools or old tools You know, you could be like Rocky Four, or you could be like somebody that wears plated shoes to run a race, right? Whatever floats your boat. But regardless, you have to figure out the way you're going to extend yourself beyond your current capacity in order to do something different. So for me, a lot of what I take from from this question just is like, what is it going to take to do something different? And not to just adopt another radical perspective. Like, you ever notice people go from being like really big liberals to really big conservatives? And there's still this like tightness of thought. It just depends on the perspective. Like, it's not like they went from being like this to be like, oh, I'm more middle ground. Just like I went from this to this because I actually had to be really tight around my thought versus more broad. So that's the challenge I really get the sense of. And really for those, I've said this before, if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you care about many of the things that we talk about. There's a good chance that you read books, right? There's a good chance you listen to other podcasts that talk about this kind of stuff. How do we make this more of a broader conversation and not just a place where we kind of like serve that one part of us when we listen to a podcast? Because that can be sometimes the thing too. Like, oh, I go listen to that. Like, if someone likes cooking, but they don't want to tell people they like cooking, they just go watch a cooking show. And then they'll tell them about they like cooking because they got their cooking thing off just watching the show. Right? Like, just asking how do we challenge ourselves to like really make these conversations more part of the general topics in our community.
Yeah. So, I wanted to get like a jump at this point in the year, and as we add on, like maybe, in a future conversation that we dial in on like a specific aspect connected to this. I mean, I think the speech though is very important from the transferable part as it pertains to these, as I see it, sort of like diasporic power is the nation states, the many of them that are peopled by people who look more like us, will they be able to adopt a philosophy that is protective of themselves, but also doesn't think I have to be down with the fill in the blank power to build a strong future for myself and others? Because as we start to think about, again, if this, shout out to the sisters in London that was pressing you on the fairness, if this place becomes increasingly, increasingly not like the business, it is like you gotta make decisions like, yo, do we need to, you need to be up out of here. Do I need to seriously consider that? Do we as a larger movement thought go, what are the places in this country where we can substantially protect ourselves with state and municipal power from overreaching federal government, and concentrate our sense of like where we are at in those places, right? Like, is that the plan? Like, what's the movement so that we can be well and also, again, keep having, forward motion to like, we're going to be, I'm not going back, as I like to say, from a sports perspective, there's people that play basketball so hard, like, I can't go back. You know what I'm saying? Wherever I came from, I ain't going back to that. And as it pertains to this, if these people think they're going to make it so hard here, they're going to push us back out into the fields or into the back alleys of a factory or out of public life, it ain't going down like that. It ain't happening. Like, anywhere we're going to be is because we chose. And ain't, and that's not disrespect to being in the fields or being in the back alleys. It's just we're gonna be where we're gonna be because we chose to be there.
Right. Or anyone that does
right. Whatever work it is, we're gonna do that out of respect and honor, not because you have decided these are the only places you're allowed to be. Nah, we're gonna do all the things, and we're gonna also show love and respect to all the people who do all the things. We're not gonna have this other world where you you try to foist this upon folks, or at least we're not gonna do it standing flat footed. And yeah, man, it's a lot of other things, I've been reading, and just even on the piece with the second emancipation, I'm realizing how little some of our younger generations know about the know about anything, but even the that wave of freedom movements in other countries and across the diaspora, I'm like, ooh, we got some work to do. You know what I'm saying, in terms of getting a more robust conversation and raising people's consciousness. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. All right,
that's a great place to be. So,
anything else for today?
Ain't the order is good.
So with that,
nothing else for the order.
So with that, I'm say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. Good Brothers is a part of the Ask Your Oldhead podcast feed and the Justice Rajee creative universe. Just came up with that one today. You can support the podcast by listening, rating, subscribing where you're listening, and go on to Patreon and search Justice Rajee and become a subscriber. You can also go to ashyouroldhead.com, cop a t-shirt, or I think there's a hoodie on there, maybe not. Yeah, man, any of those things, man. Show love to your boy, man. I gotta get my mama roof fixed. You know what I'm saying? It's real out here in the field, but be safe, make good decisions, don't end up in a rowboat. Thank you for listening. Peace.